welcome to the Wild West podcast. My name is Rich. One too many wilds in there. Anyways, scratch that. My name is Richie of the MHRT Network. Over that away is Mr. Jack Kenna, whose Wi-Fi connection today is about as good as the Raiders' season this past 2024 season today. Sadly, he's getting some choppiness and some lag going on, but hopefully he can get that sorted as the show goes on. We're going to be discussing with you some awesome stuff today. I will be discussing my Denver Broncos and a few free agents that I think my Denver Broncos should be digging into. And Jack, hopefully once he unfreezes there, we'll be discussing in a little bit more detail what his Las Vegas Raiders are going to do, including some interesting news. He and I were just talking about backstage regarding a Mr. Matthew Stafford and a Mr. Tom Brady, who is now well entrenched with the Raiders organization. Jack, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, Richie. How you doing? Hey, nation, everyone, the fans of the Wild West show, welcome aboard.
Awesome. So we're going to kind of jump right into it. We briefly touched on some free agents and whatnot last show. Didn't really be able to get into enough detail. Weren't able to kind of touch on enough of them. I'll kick off with my Denver Broncos for those of you who were here. Where's Cool Kev? Here he is. Cool Kev, thanks for the comment, my man. You were correct. You are correct. I agree.
Kev's already on fire.
Yeah. So, if you were expecting us to disagree on that particular one, you were mistaken. Although last show, you might recall, I was totally okay with almost a complete gutting of the Denver Broncos running back room, including Estime if it came down to it, because I felt that he didn't flash when he was given the opportunities enough. I felt that he kind of had some good moments and some bad moments. And it was just one of those things where I just felt that there's some improvements to be had in the running back room. And Estime put the ball on the ground a little too much for a rookie running back to kind of earn his stripes, if you will, when you're given occasional reps as a rookie running back, where you're kind of being worked into the fold and kind of hopefully brought in to be heir apparent in the running back room. You want to see them take over. You want to see them earn those additional reps and basically be, it's undeniable that they should be getting those additional reps in the running back room. And I think, Jack, with that kind of a comment, your running backs that you've had with the Las Vegas Raiders would fit a similar mold in some regards. Where you had Josh Jacobs, right? Who, there's not an AFC West analyst or fanalist alive who's not going to sit there and say, dude, that guy was not a great running back. He was a great running back. Make no mistake.
No, he was a great running back, and Telesco made a big mistake in letting him go. And after hearing the things that that Jacob said afterwards, he's like, yeah, I'll take like the same, but just give me some incentives. Mm-hmm. And Tom's like, no, you just take what we give us or kick cans. And now we're in a worse position than your Broncos. Estime would look like a star compared to the Raiders running back. So,
and this is my point, right? Which is, when you let a main guy go, like Jacobs, you want to see those other guys that are lower on the depth chart or coming in on the depth chart. You want to see them show flashes, and then you want to then give them more reps to see if that kind of play can continue or even improve. And obviously your team struggled in that regard in the run game this past season. And I mean, my Broncos were no better. So I'm not sitting here, from a pedestal kind of pointing down and saying, ha, ha, ha. I'm simply just calling out, calling a duck, if you will, in terms of, the Raiders running back room is in a similar position to where my Broncos running back room is. And, both our teams are searching for kind of that bolstering of that room. So,
and there's a lot of good free agents, and there's a lot of good draft, picks that are out there. It's a very deep running back class.
So you bring up an interesting point there. And so my prediction for the running back class here we'll go ahead and welcome Gord Peterson here to the show.
You're a
Thank
fellow
you for joining
Canadian.
us, my man.
Gord knows
awesome.
this right here. That was the gentleman I said I sent him a hat.
Fantastic. So it's always good to have another Canadian in the house. Gord, just curious, which part of Canada are you from? Obviously, you root for the wrong team, which I can at least forgive. But what part of Canada are you from? I'm also Canadian, obviously, based on my handle across all platforms, including here. Curious as where you're from, and no way. What part of Ontario, my man? I'm in central Ontario, up north of Simcoe. So curious as to where you're from, relative to there. If you don't want to share, that's fine. You can hit me up on Twitter. I promise I won't tell anyone. Oh, dude, that's awesome. So Gord is not that far away from me, Jack.
Oh, no. Oh, so Gord's been dealing with all the snow then too.
Yeah, Gord is not that far away from me. He is certainly closer to me than he is you and or the border. So he and I are certainly very close to being neighbors.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What a small world.
Yeah. So pretty cool. Always love it. Always love to see Canadian fans come in and join us here on the Wild Wild West. Also good to know that someone else can share in the misery that has been this Canadian winter here in Ontario. It has been freaking brutal.
Gord, I had to send Richie a picture before the show started. It's 71 degrees in California.
Yeah.
So I'm actually sitting in my backyard.
So we had a bit of a melt here the last couple of days. It's picked up into the above zero, at least where I am. So we've had a little bit of a melt. But then this Friday they're calling for another 15 to 20 centimeters, which is going to be around a foot when it's all said and done, give or take, in terms of snow, because why not, of additional snow. And so anyways, as we look ahead to the running back room, I just think it's really interesting that we've seen a lot of interesting challenges with the AFC West division. And I just want to kind of go on a little bit of a tangent here to see what the chat thinks and also your opinion, Jack. We went into this season as a group here on the show. And for those of you who are wondering, DZ is going to be joining us a little bit later on. He's just working out some technical challenges, if you will. And Alex, unfortunately, is not feeling well. So if we can give Alex some well wishes in the chat,
Alex,
that'd be appreciated. But with regards to our teams, we both struggled to get a truly competent right tackle on our rosters, where we were searching for that kind of next guy or that permanent guy. Obviously, the Chargers were really one of the only teams in the division that kind of locked down both of those tackle positions, and
just a little bit.
Yeah, just exactly. But most of our teams were struggling to get that locked in long-term right tackle in our group. I think the Broncos expected us to have a little bit of a better running back room, but obviously between the Raiders and the Broncos, we both pretty much struggled pretty heavily in the run game. And that's kind of another, parity, if you will, within the division. And then there's been the coaching changes and issues that we've all had collectively as a division as well, which isn't necessarily roster, but, my Denver Broncos have gone through, 9 years or 8 years, if you will, because obviously Sean Payton was deemed like the fix. But, with the Denver Broncos, and then you had the Chargers with Staley, and obviously Harbaugh was brought in, and that clearly worked. And so that's, as far as we should be concerned, they fixed that problem.
And I'm hoping I hope the Raiders fix their problem with Pete Carroll. And
now the Raiders have brought in a known commodity in Pete Carroll, right? And he, by all accounts, he's probably going to be the guy that's going to at least begin
hopefully right the ship, get the culture back.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair thing for Raiders fans and AFC West fans to kind of say, Pete Carroll has proven to build out very strong and very solid defenses, and has largely struggled, to be quite honest, to build robust offenses that weren't centered on the run game. And he really only did that when he had Marshawn Lynch. After that, he kind of had
kind of a mishmash of
we'll
different
call it
guys.
A mishmash mediocrity in terms of the offensive game and run game. You know, Marshawn Lynch was a unique cat, and he was
beast mode.
Well,
he was a beast.
There's very few people that can kind of compare to that type of running style and do what he did. You know, you got your Adrian Peterson, I guess would be one, and you got recency, you got Derrick Henry, and then you got, a couple other guys. Saquon Barkley would be a new one, a newer guy that's kind of filling that role a little bit as well now. But Josh Jacobs was certainly kind of start to flirt with that kind of category as well, I think. He certainly has had consistent years, Josh Jacobs has, in terms of his, hitting metrics and benchmarks. But either way, there's just been some synergies throughout our division and throughout what we're looking for. And so we kind of find ourselves often talking about the same guys in the draft. Mm-hmm. or at least similar positions in the draft.
Well, it makes sense. We all want the best player at the position, and there's only going to be so many of those guys for sure.
Right. And so when we look at the running back position and running back group, I would imagine that you and I will be of similar minds, where I am absolutely okay with my running back room getting completely gutted. I think that maybe Jaleel McLaughlin might be the only guy that I might wish to keep, simply because he is a bit of a speed guy, and a lot of the other guys in the draft, while they might have speed, they're speed and then, rather than, they're speed and rather than just speed. So Jaleel has got some speed, and that's kind of his main trait. He hits the hole quick, able to kind of read things and whatnot.
I apologize. I got dropped. So what was the running back that you were talking about?
Jaleel McLaughlin on the team. So he's been kind of one of the more productive running backs on the Denver Broncos in the last 2 seasons. He was a UDFA last year, picked up as one, if I'm not mistaken, a priority, if memory serves correctly. I'm just trying to go through and figure that out. I think that's kind of how he came to the team. Made the roster.
Doesn't his skill set kind of match one of the running backs you have right now?
Well, he is on the team right now.
No, I know he's on the team, but doesn't he already match like one of the running backs that you already have currently on the roster?
Not really. He's a smaller guy than, say, an Estime. He's smaller than Javonte Williams. And he's, I would argue, faster than both of them, generally speaking. So he's just got a slightly different skill set. So he would be a guy that I could see fitting a niche role, and maybe if he can learn how to pass pro and pass catch, he might be able to kind of be a bit more versatile for the team. But aside from that, I think you can pretty much remove the entire room, and you probably want to bring in 3 new guys at least to kind of fill that void and that role in the running game. And then I think that what we would probably do is we would probably then either keep Burton, but he would be affiliated with the tight end room. So you keep either 4 running backs, like actual running backs, and then Burton would kind of be fullback tight end, hybrid sort of thing. Or you would end up bringing in cutting Burton, who's our current fullback, and perhaps shifting Nate Atkins, who's a tight end on the roster, who has played fullback both in college and at the NFL level, as well as tight end, and just kind of move him into that hybrid fullback tight end role that's become, fairly prominent in the NFL today.
So in the way of, part of what, again, we couldn't finish it all up last week. So again, in the way of like the free agent running backs that are out there, which there's a lot of names.
There are.
And, it sounds like, that's kind of one of your highest priorities is to grab one of them. So who are you thinking?
So as I alluded to last week, the 2 big time running backs that are kind of being thrown around, are Najee Harris and Aaron Jones. I personally like Najee Harris. I believe that his best trait has been that he's been an Iron Man at the position, where he hasn't missed a game at all.
He's got over 1,000 yards a season. He's got what?
Yeah,
almost 400 yards in receiving. It's like, you know, he's a player that pretty much does it all.
Yeah, he's got that dual threat capability of being able to be a pass catcher and a runner. He's got the pass pro ability as a veteran running back at this point in the league. He's like 6'1", 230, somewhere in that range, which is exactly the size that I like for the running back position. And I just think that he can do a lot of things, and he's done so at a high level in the NFL. And I believe Pittsburgh will likely let him go. And I think he probably would like to see a different team, because it seems that there's another running back, and I can't remember his name, on the roster that is kind of starting to push him out the door at the running back position. So I just don't think Pittsburgh will value him the way that he believes that he ought to be valued.
Yeah. Plus he's probably going to want like 10 to 11.
I'm not sure he'll quite get that high. And here's my theory of what we're going to have this year, Jack. I think that you have this massive class of college elite level running backs.
Oh, there's a lot.
And there's a ton.
I mean, we talk about a big back that looks really good. Hey, what's up, DZ? Welcome aboard.
Hey, man, what'd I miss?
We're talking about kind of leading off from like the last show, talking about, because we really didn't get to finish up in the way of the free agents that we want to kind of see. And so right now Richie's talking about the running back position, and we're kind of like going, what's going to fit the scheme, what's going to fit the mold. And I was just going to say with Najee, that's who Richie wants. I think there's a running back. I don't think he's going to be as good as pass catcher, but I don't remember the kid's name, but he's a big back. He's ultra talented. There's really two, super good running backs coming out of this draft, and a lot of starters, which is really impressive. But that kid from North Carolina.
Oh, Amari Hampton?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Looks like a workhorse, yeah.
And look, there's a bunch of them. So what I was getting at is that you have this huge. We were just kind of getting into the free agency, and then Jack was saying that he thought like Najee Harris would command something like 10 or 11 a year. And
I think he's probably the top free agent running back.
No, Aaron Jones.
Nick Chubb?
Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb are going to be.
I think Jones is around 8.
Well.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I mean, the thing about Najee compared to those is he doesn't have an injury history like they do.
There you go.
Like he does have a lot of. He's an Iron Man, So
you sure you weren't in the background? Because that's exactly what Richie said.
I wasn't in the background. Quick note: I have a $1,500 computer in front of me that I am going full on caveman style that I can't figure it out. So I'm like, with computer, I've got everything. Just the whole thing, dude. I haven't used a Mac computer since I was in elementary school. So let's just say that.
Yeah. So where I was going with it is that you have this huge swath of talent that's about to come into the NFL through the draft.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, with the volume that's there and the quality that's there, is you're going to get a starting running back likely in this draft just due to straight numbers, probably well into the 3rd and 4th round, and probably even some undrafted guys that we're just not even talking about right now. They're going to be
possibly 5th.
Unreal, right?
That's a good argument to that money that you're talking about. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. So the problem is you have a supply and demand issue, in my opinion, right now this year. You have a fair number of unrestricted free agents that are, in that upper-ish tier of the NFL at running backs, which is great, for a team that wants to bolster that room is fine. But then the 2025 draft may well be the deepest draft we have ever seen at the running back position in terms of quality starters, like right out the gate. And so I do wonder if my thing here is I do wonder if you're going to see the market value of running backs this offseason take a precipitous fall as a result of just the volume that's coming into the NFL as quality.
Yeah, I can see that.
And
possibility, that's for sure.
And I think that, I realize the running back position kind of saw a bit of a resurgence as we started to see teams, go through the run game more recently. But you're also going to see a bunch of teams that are going to want 2 and 3 dudes on their roster that are just absolutely stacked. And the best teams typically have at least 2. And so I could foresee the market kind of being just like weighted down as a result of what the draft is going to look like ahead, because teams are going to say, you want 10, go away. I'm going to get 2 guys in the draft. And I'm willing to take that draft capital risk, because I think at least 1 or 2 of the dudes I'm going to get are going to be legit quality starters. And if I need to take them back to back or trade back and then kind of like stack 2 picks and sandwich them together or something, I'm happy to do that, because I think I can find someone that, can do the thing.
Hit the nail on the head. I've been saying in like all the Raider chats, like double dip on running back this year.
Yeah.
Double dip.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, for us as Chargers, I'm like, they don't bring back JK. That's something definitely need to do. And I would say for the Raiders as well. I mean, who do you
Raiders
guys
are getting
have
rid
on
of their running
roster?
back.
Who do you guys have on roster right now?
We got Dylan Lobby. We got Zamir White, who got hurt and just stunk it up. And then we have Raider Nation help me out, a guy that we had on our practice squad that came in. He played decent, and then he got hurt too.
Okay.
But he's an unrestricted free agent. So in reality, we got Zamir White and Lobby are the only 2 running backs that are actually on the roster. And Lobby got 1 carry and fumbled it for the whole season.
Wow.
So if I had
Zamir McCormick, there you go. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, McCormick. Yeah. So my ranking of the undrafted agents that I want for the Denver Broncos would be Najee Harris, number 1. I actually would probably want Nick Chubb as the number 2. I just think that he has a proven track record. Yes, he's getting hurt from time to time, and I get it. But when he's healthy and good, he's great. And then the last one would be Aaron Jones. Now, if we got either of those 3 dudes in the offseason, I would not be upset. Because I think the Denver Broncos need to bring in a guy to replace Javonte Williams at least. I think they need to let Javonte Williams go. He did not have a good year. I think if I remember right from the rankings, he was ranked like 40 of 40 running backs with the number of carries and all that kind of stuff. And that is just not a running back that you can sustain success with a guy at that stage of his career and after that major injury that he just came back from. Now,
is that your number 1 position of need and want?
I think it's something that we're going to need to lock down and do so quickly in the offseason. Is it my number 1? No, because I still maintain that if you have an elite level offensive line, a la what you saw from the Eagles in this past Super Bowl, I think that you can force holes open via the offensive line, that you could pretty much throw a halfway decent running back there and they would look more than competent.
Especially in Peyton's system.
Correct. And so what you really need is those big time people movers on the offensive line to open that hole up or that running lane up so that your running back is starting their run 3 yards downfield, eluding or shirking an inside linebacker in a worst case scenario. So
it makes huge sense when you look at it. It's like when you got those plays where you're 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, and you can actually run the ball because the offensive line is, pushing it forward.
Right.
It makes it a lot easier on your quarterback instead of always having to go for it and passing on, 3rd down.
Right. So I would say look at what you saw DZ's team do in the offseason in the draft. Everyone was saying wide receiver, offensive weapon.
Yeah.
And Harbaugh said, hold my beer, we're getting a tackle. And in speaking with Robert, I was saying, I think you've just set your team up for absolute long-term success because a top-tier tackle, a legit top-tier tackle, is worth their weight in gold because
all the guys in the front.
Well,
look at this. Just look at the Super Bowl. That showed everything.
I agree, but I think that when you have a guy that can completely seal the edge and do so on his own, and have another tackle on the other side that can seal the edge and do so on their own as well, what you've now done is you've completely freed up your offensive playbook because you no longer require a tight end to be in tight and block. You can have a tight end that chooses to stay in line at tight and block. However, they can just as easily chip and run a route, or you could run a 12 personnel set, have 2 tight ends, and both of them chip and run and block if you have a competent pair of tackles on the outside that can block and stop most teams and most outside linebackers, right? Or pass rushers.
Who are you thinking, Richie? And then do you, McGlinchey, where do you move them to? Left guard or right guard?
A different team?
A different.
I think McGlinchey has got some decent traits, and I think that he is decent, but he's not great. And I think that he gets blown up an awful lot, and I think that Garrett Bowles holds an awful lot and gets away with an awful lot of penalties. I think both of them are serviceable tackles. So I'm not saying that they're not decent enough to get by. I'm just saying that they are not the bookends that you can simply just leave out in an island regardless of which team you play. If you're playing a team and certain teams, you're going to have to compensate for their weaknesses so that you don't get killed on the edges. And I think that's just a fact.
So I'm kind of curious to know, I'm glad the free agents, since we're talking free agents, who are the left or right, tackles, they switch them around. Who are you kind of looking at?
They all suck.
Yeah,
no, I mean, the free agent wise.
Tackle wise,
they all suck.
Not good. Yeah.
You don't like any of them?
No, I am glad. I am glad that the Denver Broncos at least have serviceable tackles on our roster. This year is not the year to be needing a free agent tackle at all.
To be honest, I don't really like this whole free agent class to begin with. I mean, yeah, there's some good guys in there, but what I really see happening, especially with the cap space being increased, is a lot of these teams are going to try to retain these free agents that all of us thinking our teams can go after. So like the Raiders with a ton of cap, the Patriots, the Commanders. Now there's some destinations like people want to go to the Commanders. I'm sure there's going to be some people want to go to the Raiders with Papa Pete, go to that. But I see a lot of these free agents that my fan base wants staying with their current teams, which is kind of sucks because I'm not a big fan of like the guys we need. Now there are some good guards out there so like Trey Smith, right? He's like the top guard. I think that he stays in Kansas City. Like Kansas City would be, even though he looked pretty bad against Philly, I see him staying. I don't know.
You do? I wish Alex was here for this because I don't know because Cray Humphrey is also their center as a free agent. So and they don't have a ton of cap. So it's like if you're going to pick your poison, Alex already said he'll take Cray Humphrey over Smith.
Yeah, they got Nick Bolton as a free agent. They got Justin Reed's a free agent. They got some top dudes, some staple pieces for that team. But thing about Smith, he's young. He's only 26.
And it's crazy. And he's a 6th round draft pick on top of that.
Right, right. So look, hey, Veach is a good GM. Maybe he's like willing to take that gamble and go through the draft, you know? But me personally, like for like guys that my team need, um, there's a lot of hypotheticals going on with the edge group and stuff. But like, oh, we'd like to get a pass catching tight end, or we'd like to get um, a running back or a wide receiver. And I'm not a fan of all of them because all the guys that you really want would have to go through via trade. And now there's rumors of T being franchise tagged by the Bengals. And, what does that leave us with? Which a lot of fans are now like clasping to Devontae Adams potentially. But I mean, he's what, 30?
Like Van Jefferson, Mac Hollins,
Yeah.
Mondo Moore.
None of those interest me. Like, they're all role players, in my opinion. Now, there's some good defensive tackles coming up in free agency, but this draft is arguably just as good as running back, is even better at defensive tackle in this year's draft. So you can see teams are going to be like going for the trench guys. Look at Ronnie Stanley. I mean, if anybody, he's 31, wants to go after him for a tackle. I don't know who maybe that's somebody the Chiefs look at. I don't know. Not for me.
It's a possibility. Yeah. I got to like reset, like, what I said last week. I said last week, my number one, free agent that I kind of wanted because the Raiders are so bad at quarterback. And, there's only like 2 quarterbacks. And now there's even talk there's only one really good quarterback. And I said Justin Fields last week. So now it's, today there's some interesting news out there.
Yep.
With Matthew Stafford. So, and it's kind of funny to hear like, guys that are, insiders going back and forth and battling on Twitter and so forth. Like Tom Brady and Stafford either A, spent the weekend together, it's Montana or Wyoming or one of those states.
It's a Yellowstone resort. It's like, the elite of the elite live there. It's like the only private ski area in the world or something. And it's like the lowest house is like $6 million. It's a very exclusive area that they were at.
Yeah. And then the other insider, Ian Rappaport's like, nah, they just kind of randomly met up there.
Yeah.
But I find it very interesting because
this is like
if we go back to 2021,
tampering.
Well, again, the Rams gave permission for him to talk to other teams.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
So he can talk to whoever he wants to. But this is going back to 2021.
Jack, do you know what they call that? Do you know what they call that?
You can tell me. Go ahead. You can tell me what you call it.
They met up accidentally on purpose.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
And they just happen to be staying at the same place and hanging out all weekend. But that's like the same thing. We go back to 2021, going from Detroit to the Rams. Oh, Sean McVay and his wife and Stafford and his wife. Oh, they met up in Cabo or somewhere like that in Mexico and just happened to be there at the same point. So that kind of changes my outlook based on that, depending on what happens there. Again, I said Justin Fields. So if Stafford goes for a trade, well, Justin's definitely not there. And I'm like you guys, I want guards. We all want guards.
Yeah.
And we said Trey Smith, but a guy that I'm kind of looking at who was a bust with the Jets, but then he goes over to Philadelphia and goes from the right tackle to a guard and is simply a massive man, and he proved his value. Is Mekhi Becton.
Yeah.
So
Mekhi Becton, yep.
I mean, I look at our right guard. Our right guard is like 290 pounds. He doesn't even break the 300-pound mark in Parham. He's a really strong kid, but he can't handle the Chris Jones. I mean, he just gets overpowered. Man. If you could have put a Beckman in there and replace him, I mean, that's just going to give, again, the same thing. You're going to get more push, and the running backs are so bad for the Raiders. And what Kev said, yeah, our running backs are practice squad guys.
What about Patrick McCarry from the Ravens?
I don't know much about him.
Well,
I kind of looked at him like a guy I like too when he was drafted as from the Bears was Trevor, Jenkins. He was drafted as a right tackle, but they said his arms are too small, and it kind of proved it. He was not a good right tackle. They moved him on the inside to guard. He looked a lot better. He's a nasty player. I like that. He's got the JPJ mentality. So he was a guy I looked at. And then even from Detroit, Kevin Zettler is another guy I think that, he would be a good fit for this team.
Man, I had all my notes. I wrote down all these notes. They're on the phone, and I was going to use the laptop tonight. But I had like 3 guys from every team, like the Broncos, the Raiders, the Chiefs, the Chargers, all 3 guys that intrigued me as potential free agents. And then, Raiders, I think you guys have the least amount of free agents. That surprised the heck out of me.
we have 27 free agents, and 17 of them are unrestricted free agents. The rest are like, restricted free agents or exclusive rights.
So UFAs. So
the Raiders just re-signed one of their, restricted free agents, and it's a tall tale sign of like what's going to happen to one of the starters from last year. Raiders re-signed, who was Polamalu, who's Troy Polamalu's, nephew. He came in the league as a UDFA. He stuck around, played on the practice squad, worked his way up, had a wonderful season last year, and replaced an Epps, and they signed him to a starter style contract. So he got 2 years, $8.45 million. So now I see him as he's going to be the starter. Epps is going to kick cans. He's going to go elsewhere.
Nice. I know the Chargers re-signed a guy that was on my top 3 they needed to bring back, and that was Elijah Molden. I don't know if we talked about it on last week's show, if it happened afterward. I think it did. I think it was between last show and this show. And they re-signed him to a 3-year deal. I don't know the exact money, but I think it's around the $18 million deal, $18 million range. And I'm extremely excited for that because it was the first time since 18 in the 19 season that we got to see Derwin James actually be Derwin James, because Derwin's not a free safety. He can play it, but he's more of a nickel guy. And when they brought over Elijah, that allowed Derwin to come down to the box and, play his best ball. So I'm glad they brought him back. He's kind of a fan favorite, coming over and via trade. Wait, no, I don't know if it was trade or free agency from Tennessee. And the team really missed him. He wasn't there the playoff game because he broke his leg. He had some sort of femur crack or something. So anyways, but I'm glad he's back.
I'm glad he's back for you. I want to because this is just such a big piece of news. I don't know if Stafford is really doing this to really want to he wants his money, right? Right now he is not, he's only got $27 million, for this year. But the Rams are going to eat $49 million and or $45 million this year and $49 next year. I'm just wondering if the Rams are letting Stafford do this to gauge the market, come back, because in reality, it's a really good fit for Stafford and the Rams.
Yeah, what you just said is what the Rams fan base is hoping.
That's what they're hoping, and I'm the opposite. I'll trade some picks because what I look at, our division again. The quarterback is every day. All I ever hear in Raider Nation: this quarterback, that quarterback. What do we do for them? No, we don't like this guy. We don't like that guy. But there is a consensus. Again, it's a given. We would go from the worst quarterback in the division to the second best quarterback in the division. And that's undisputed. So, and the whole thing is it's a time frame thing, right? Pete Carroll is 74 years old.
Stafford, but yeah, he's really good. I have nothing against Stafford.
No, I'm just saying that against the quarterbacks that my team going against your guys' teams, it's not close. I mean, we got junior varsity guys, and you guys got seniors. You guys got all the good guys. And even, with, Richie's young quarterback, he's proved his mettle. And, none of my quarterbacks have done that. And if a Stafford were to come on this team, that's just going to change the whole look. but he fits the mold, of what Pete Carroll's trying to do. Again, we want to bring that culture. So, a lot of people talked about Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers brings a lot of baggage. Yes, he's still a good quarterback, but he comes with a lot of baggage. Russell Wilson, Richie knows this. He comes with his entourage and his baggage, where Stafford is a straight player. And he brings that type of mentality, which is, I think, what this team needs. So I just wonder if it's all smoke or if there's a lot of fire going to be involved. And it's going to be interesting to find out, that's for sure.
I think there's a little bit of both, especially with Brady involved.
The problem with Stafford
came out.
My issue with Stafford is that while he's never missed a game, he does often get hurt. And so you're not like, there's some quarterbacks that are good hurt, as in like they don't have a drop off in kind of how they play or what they can do or how it impacts them. Stafford is somewhat unique in the fact that he's not extraordinarily mobile. He is a more traditional pocket passer, generally speaking. And so an injury to somebody like that actually negatively impacts them a little bit more. Whereas, for example, Patrick Mahomes or even like a Hurts or someone like that, if they get hurt, as long as it's not major, even if they are reverted back to being a pocket passer of sorts, they're still typically going to be modestly mobile because it's part of their game and they're used to it. And I just think they're going to be less impacted than a guy like Stafford. Stafford has a good arm, all that good stuff. So that's not really the issue with him. And I certainly would push back on your whole second best quarterback in the division business. I think
he's a great ball spinner.
I'm not saying he's not a great quarterback. I'm just simply saying that, he has to prove himself, and I think that's something that a lot of people kind of miss still, is that he has to prove himself.
I see a scenario where the Raiders could bring in Stafford and Cooper Kupp. I can see it, and them both getting a new start in Vegas. Because, Vegas does need another guy. I don't know if a slot guy per se, but they could use Cooper Kupp over there.
Yeah, DZ, I don't see that happening, because you got Trey Tucker is your slot guy. He's like a 4.38 speed guy. And then, of course, Brock Bowers moves all over, and he plays a lot in the slot too. So to use that type of money to get Stafford, when he's going to he wants to be at least 50 million. So you're going to cut that cap almost in half. So that where I had to look at, again, we're talking about free agents. That's why I wanted to touch on this first, because then you have to readjust. Because when I talked last week about Justin Fields, when he's going to be less than probably $10 million a year, now you're going to pay a guy $50 million a year. You got to reevaluate, okay, what can I do with the remaining type of money to re-sign your own players and go out and get the guys that you want to see your team bring in? It changes the landscape completely.
Yeah.
And Gord, that would put him at the ninth highest paid quarterback. So,
I don't know. The Raiders are in such a weird spot. They're building all this this new stuff up with Pete Carroll, but Pete's no spring chicken. He's still
that's why you got to do it now, because you don't have all the time.
But the thing is that's how people are talking about the Chargers. They got to go now. They got to win now. And I'm glad I'm not a GM, because the amount of holes that I see on my team, it's insane. I don't know how you're going to fill this out, how you're going to bring back, they got to get weapons. They got to get running backs. They got to get, the edge room is could be a potential collapse if Mac decides to test free agency, which he's never been a free agent in his life.
Wrong way.
And
That comment right there from Matt.
Stafford at $40 million, no state tax. That's good job, Matt. That's makes sense.
Well, right now he's in California, which let's just say, better you than me.
They don't use lube in California. Let's just say that. It is not kind. But I mean, so like the Raiders are in a weird predicament, but I could see them building this thing quicker. You know, I mean, they got some good draft capital. They got a lot of money to play with.
10 picks.
Yeah, we're projected to 10 as well, which is good. But I mean, it's all got to your GM Spytech. He's got to hit on like a lot of picks. He's got to hit. I mean, so that's kind of a wild card for you guys. You know, Pete's going to be good. I like your guys' D coordinator. Who you guys retain, who you go after in free agency. A lot of stuff's got to come together. You know what I mean? I think that's my team as well. I think the Chiefs are they've got a well-oiled machine, and I'm sure Rich can talk about his team going into phase 2.0 with Bo and 3.0 with Peyton as a whole. How they go forward.
And that's part of the reason, you know, again, we guys talking about Stafford, you know, being a pocket passer, not moving. When you get a 350-pound guy like Beckham, you know, I was all about Trey Smith, but, you know, he's just going to cost too much money. So if Stafford goes,
Jack.
So that's where I moved off of him as my number one offensive guard I wanted to go to a Beckham, because he's going to cost you probably about half that price. And he's a huge man, and you can, you know, he's not going to get pushed back against, you know, guys like Chris Jones, at least not as much. So I think that would be a good fit in pairing with a Stafford if Stafford were to come.
I'm just like, then again, it's like, do the Eagles let Mekhi walk, or do they bring him back? You know, I don't know what their cap space situation is.
They're like the Saints. They just find ways.
It's just a fallacy. It's
keep pushing it back, but that's what the Rams did, and that's why they're right now we're having that issue with Stafford, because you know
space is a fugazi. It's just like what's his name in that movie says. It doesn't exist. It's a mythical thing. Some teams. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the Saints are gonna do. Glad I'm not a Saints fan. I'll tell you that.
So. I thought I'd just kind of continue this off and give a summary for the Broncos in terms of 5 in order. I actually have this ranked for me of free agent positions. So
that your team needs?
My team needs, correct.
Okay.
Number 1, offensive center.
Okay.
Number 2, running back.
Okay.
Number 3, defensive tackle, defensive end. So in that interior of the defensive line. Number 4, inside linebacker. And number 5, wide receiver.
Dude, we're almost the same. I mean, flip that order any which way, and that goes for us.
Number 6 is guard, because I do believe that we need someone to replace Powers with. Who struggled in areas last year, but I'm willing to move that down the list further to wait and see, because I believe that the center position is such a critical linchpin on the offensive line, as we've discussed on the show, that because Denver is so weak at that position, that I believe that it is severely hindering our team's success in such a big way.
I'll be happy to trade you Andre James.
Bradley Bozeman will be a free agent. Let's just say that.
That's fantastic. That's awesome for someone else's team. The thing. So what my big thing is, and we've spoken about it on the show multiple times. Alex being a former offensive lineman. through college. It can kind of speak to it obviously in a little bit more in depth, but they are literally the secondary quarterback aside from the quarterback himself. They make the protection adjustments, they make the calls, they do all of those things to make sure that the offensive line are kind of in line and in the right spot.
Yeah. Problem
I have is that there are only a handful of offensive centers. You have Ryan Kelly, who I really like actually as a center. I really liked him. I liked him better a couple years ago before he went to Indy. I really liked him as a center, but he's getting a little bit older now, and so I kind of start questioning whether or not. So I'm kind of starting to question whether or not he's a guy that we kind of would want to bring in. He could be a great like 1-year deal kind of guy, with like a secondary coach on the field sort of thing, where you kind of bring him in and then draft a guy really early, for example, with the intention that you have Kelly and that guy to kind of elevate the room and kind of allow the guy to kind of learn behind him. So that's certainly one option there. You got Minnesota's Dan Feeney. You got Philly. You got Nick Gates that's there as well. But the problem I have is
I'll tell you the best guy on there, Rich, and there's going to be a bidding war for him. Is Drew Dahlman, the Falcons center. That guy is an absolute beast. He is a mauler. He can run block, he can pass block, and he is young. So I got a feeling that guy is going to get paid by somebody this offseason, and it's could very potentially be your team, my team, but that is a guy that I'm hoping we go after hard.
So Richie, you guys do more zone, right? Zone blocking?
It's like a zone power kind of cross. Like
zone power
scheme is a little weird.
Because Feeney, the one thing I will say about that kid, I just looked at the whole Philadelphia offensive line. They move so well in the way of the blocking scheme that they had. That the guy's mobile, he's good. So I think he could be a really good fit as well.
Yeah, but they run zone.
Which guy did you say, Dan Feeney?
Yeah, isn't that the center from Philly?
Oh no, that's Nick. Wait, hang on. Philly's. I only see Nick Gates. Philly.
Oh, the Gates. Okay, then I apologize.
That's right. Feeney is Minnesota.
No, then I got it wrong. Sorry, chat.
Big deal.
Wrong guy. I don't have an iPad in front of me or anything like that.
No, their starting center is Juergens.
So this guy must be a backup. Then.
So he's a backup. He's their backup.
Oh, then,
he's not
then,
it's not like their main starter has now become available, for example. So, but the offensive center position is such a critical one. It directs the offense,
Yes.
and it also becomes a huge position in the run game, because they're leading the charge to kind of force those blocks and open those lanes and those holes to kind of do the thing. And so I just think that's such an important position. Also, shout out to Zach Seegers in Broncos country. He wrote a great article. I thought it was really interesting and a great read. I commented on it, so you kind of be able to catch it from my feed. He had an interesting one where this isn't free agent, which is why I didn't bring him up or anything, but he brought up Eric McCoy. So as it stands right now, the New Orleans Saints are in a big cap issue right now, where they are in a massive logjam and they need to start making some decisions. And it could be in their best interest to eat some cap from their very, very highly sought after offensive center position. If they believe they have someone else who's at least capable, perhaps, behind him.
Right.
And with Sean Payton's connections over to the New Orleans Saints, there may be a little bit of an inside track there. And so that would be a guy that I was really intrigued by when Zach Seegers brought him up in his long form article of players that the Broncos should perhaps seek in free agency or via trade. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Now, he's not obviously a free agent, which is why I didn't kind of call him out earlier when we were talking. But he's a guy that really could he's not going to see any cap savings for the Saints this season. It's actually a look ahead to eat some cap dollars this year, knowing that you're saving the cap dollars next year and beyond by trading him. And whereas teams would need him now, and it may be a good chance to kind of do right by a guy that's actually, done right by you.
Hey, Rick, I agree with you. You got to fix the trenches on the offensive line. We got to beef up both sides. That's for sure. Work inside out, man. We've seen it. We set the game plan against the Chiefs, on Christmas Day. We saw it with Tampa. We saw it with the Eagles. That's the course of winning Super Bowls, inside out.
The Chargers O-line, I had this weird description of them today, because there's news coming out that they're floating the idea of Zion Johnson, our left guard, playing center, and I'm like, oh boy, yay! I can't wait. Just kidding. But we had two bookends, right? Two solid bookends, and I felt like the interior were magazines. It was like these two solid bookends, and inside is just this hot mess, holding up paper. So I don't know what they're gonna do, but bringing in our left guard to play center potentially got me all kinds of nervous. But supposedly Zion did take snaps at center, but I mean, the center's not. You just don't jump in there and start snapping balls and being the freaking quarterback of the O-line.
Hey, you Broncos, Charger fans, man, offer the Raiders a trade. We got Andre James. He's played in the league for many years. The Raiders are looking to probably look to move off of him.
I mean,
yeah, but your run game was not great, and he's the dude that's calling all the plays and everything there. So why would you?
You're right, and I look at the running backs that we had too, and again, they are all practice squad players. So if you guys need a center, hey, we'll be happy to trade one, because we got JPJ, and that guy's going to be there for the next 10 years.
Yeah, tell you what, I'll take JPJ.
That's a hell of a pickup, man.
JPJ. Yeah, I'll take JPJ. How's that? You can have what's his face, and I'll take JPJ instead. But
whoever it is, nope.
So I'm going to quickly just complete the list here, because we've already discussed running back position. D end and D tackle on the Denver Broncos are kind of like a weird, sneaky need for the Denver Broncos. For those of you who are not Broncos fans, you're obviously not going to know the ins and outs.
So that's the sixth spot.
My third.
DT. What's your third? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we got John Franklin Myers in the offseason. He's been a great addition.
Yes.
Okay, we got Roach, who's been a great addition. But we have DJ Jones, who's coming up, where he may or may not be brought back.
He's making a lot of money, man.
He's making a lot of money, so he freed up some additional cap space. But he's a very good player. He's not quite as elite as he was in his former team, but he certainly is no slouch.
No.
And so, but he's coming due. And then we have 2 or 3 additional guys on the D line that are actually coming up in contracts in 2026. So we have a couple guys that are coming off contracts in this year, and then the rest of them, or the majority of them, are then coming due on contracts in 2026. So the Denver Broncos really need to look ahead and start to bring in new blood and good talent in those spots to allow them to move off of some guys that may not be performing up to where they want, or maybe too expensive where they can maybe get 2 really good guys for the same price as the guy that they're able to move off of. And so I think D tackle, D end is a huge.
Is it your 3 tech or like your nose tackle that you need more?
Well, DJ Jones would have been a nose tackle, D tackle. But the Broncos have been known to shift some of those guys out to the end spots where they might go like big sets. Well, they'll bring in 2 D tackles. One of them will play kind of technically at the end position, and then one of them at D tackle. And so they have kind of shifted some of those guys around. So DJ Jones has actually been a guy that they have actually moved out or kicked out I use that term very loosely, moved out to the DN spot, and then brought in maybe another guy at the D tackle position, just to kind of get bigger bodies there if they were struggling maybe with the run game or stuffing the run or goal line or whatever the case may be. So I mean, ideally, you probably want to find like an elite D tackle, although.
An interesting draft pick, thinking about talking about like, the nose tackle. I mean, the other defensive tackle from Michigan, who's the nose tackle, he's rated as a first-round pick, and I think he'll be there for you if you were to draft like a nose tackle. So that'd be interesting to kind of see too.
Michigan has 4 guys projected in the first round, which is like the first time in their history as a school.
2 defensive tackles, a tight end,
and a cornerback.
Yeah. So my actual sneaky pick in the first round of the draft for my Broncos is actually to take a rushing D tackle.
That would be Kenneth Grant. Then
yes, yeah.
God damn it, I'd be pissed off.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what Raider Nation. We're talking Graham and his comp is Christian Wilkerson. To have 2 Christian Wilkersons and Max Crosby, and then whatever happens on the other defensive end side.
I love Kenneth Grant. Like, if you watch his highlights, that guy is a animal, dude. He is such a beast.
He's got a Max Crosby motor.
Dude, oh my God.
It's Mason Graham.
So he was a guy that I kind of liked in the draft.
No, Kenneth Grant is
he's a D tackle.
Yeah, there's 2 guys, Jack. Mason Graham and then Kenneth Grant. Michigan guys. I don't know if.
Yeah, honestly, so I like the D tackle there, the rushing D tackle. He's a guy that I really like, and I think that's a really important piece. Sorry, I just see a comment here from Rick. I'll quickly address it, and then I'll very quickly move on. Free agents. I don't have a good list of free agents for D tackles for the Denver Broncos, but I think we need some guys to fill in. We need some additional guys who can come in, fill into that depth component. Maybe one splash move at best, and then kind of leave it at there, and then kind of maybe bring in some second and third wave kind of guys to kind of fill out the team a little bit more fully. So Rick asks, Denver needs to shore up the O-line as well. They finally going to get over the hump after 2025. Team is looking good for future thoughts. I agree. The challenge that my Denver Broncos have is our cap outlook, and I want to make sure I get the numbers at least close to right and kind of completely going off of memory. This year, we are 40 to 50 mil in cap space, give or take, somewhere in that general range.
And the cap got increased too, so.
It did, but it's like 40 to 50, somewhere in that general range, give or take. However, next year, the Broncos have like 140 mil in cap space.
Jesus.
And so we're in a super unique position in terms of cap room where we can like not backload, but we can shift money to the second year and kind of make like a 3-year deal, but they kind of like move that money into majority year 2 kind of thing to kind of really sweeten the second year with the team for these guys, or eat signing bonuses, maybe majority in year 2 kind of thing, instead of eating it all at kind of early stages of the contract. Like little things like that, that the Denver Broncos are in a position to kind of do with their cap space as you look ahead to 2026 is where our cap really completely opens up for the team. Now, that being said, I think you also have some of the other dudes that are kind of becoming available and gone. So you're going to need to fill out key positions with that cap. So it's not just you just have like free and clear 140 and you got all the starters that are there, right?
Right.
But Rick, to answer your question with regards to the O-line, I could not agree more. The question is, what do you want to do in 2025 to start that process? If a guy like JPJ or someone like him falls in the second round or kind of gets in there, I would certainly be a huge proponent to kind of jump up and nab someone like that to shore up the trenches. as you know, I'm a huge kind of build the trenches and start, winning games. I think that's kind of the recipe for success. That's kind of tried, tested, and proven. But then there's also the defensive line, where if you have an elite and constant barrage that you can attack your opponent with, where you're not just kind of relying on one or two dudes to kind of get to the backfield, that's also a recipe for success, as we saw in the Super Bowl. The Eagles had both, which is why that was such a one-sided game. Credit to Angelo for that near perfect prediction in the game. Yeah. I think that's a reasonable blueprint on how to get all the way to the big dance and perhaps win it on a somewhat regular basis. Now, drafting and having enough talent in both of those position groups on your roster requires an incredible draft. And you have to have a very competent general manager in order to get you there. But the Eagles have done that. And frankly, the Chiefs are in that same discussion.
Yeah.
Same discussion. And so that's kind of my general thought on my Denver Broncos, is that I think that this year's draft is going to be incredibly important to build out depth in the trenches for my Denver Broncos, as well as attain depth and starters in the running game. I could also see an offensive weapon being taken in the form of a tight end, for example, for my Denver Broncos in the draft, because we kind of need a guy that kind of fits that kind of general mold, but he has to be someone that can fulfill all main stages of what a tight end requires. So we can't have a dude that just stays in lines and blocks. We can't have a guy that can only pass catch. They have to be able to kind of play that slash role, that kind of, you never know.
And that is where I think both your teams are going to be battling, is looking at that tight end, because you both teams need them.
Yep.
So I wonder if you guys are going to be playing leapfrog over one another to get like that Penn State,
That's what I'm thinking about. You're talking about Colston Loveland, who's been projected to both our teams, and the Broncos just happen to be a few spots above us. And people are like, "Oh, Colston Loveland, he's just a pass catcher." He's not. No, he can block. No. He can do it all. He's just a lighter frame, but he's a really incredible blocker. He comes from, he was under Harbaugh. They're really tough, well-built team over there. So in Michigan, up in Ann Arbor, but I could definitely see maybe some leapfrogging, because there's those two elite tight ends that are coming up. But I mean, I don't know. I'm still skeptical of tight ends, taking them early in drafts. Like teams have been lucky lately with, especially the Raiders, getting Bowers.
That's not luck. That guy has always been predicted to be a great talent.
But do you know what I mean? It's just recently have tight ends come in and are hitting in the draft early. It's a tight end for the first year. It's always kind of hard to develop. Yes, the Raiders really got lucky with. He's a freak. I mean, he's God sent. I mean, he is. When they say generational, that kid is generational. Right.
To say anyone, I look at Michael Mayers the year before, who, as a Notre Dame fan, he ran the whole team. Everything ran through him.
Yeah, I wanted Mayer. I liked him a lot.
And you know what? I look at Mayers, and then I look at Brock Bowers. They're not even on the same level. I mean, it's not even close. Yeah, and talk about tight ends and make it even more interesting. That Gronk said he doesn't know anything about these rumors. He's like, where did this come from? So that means there is going to be more of a battle for your teams to go after the tight ends.
I mean, and if you look at even like the tight end free agency, it's nothing. It is pretty dreadful in my opinion. I mean, there's some guys, but it's nothing that you want to like really break the bank for either, in my opinion.
No, I agree. That's what you guys will be battling out in the draft.
I mean, there are some tight ends. There's not
Gesicki.
Gesicki,
he's there. There's oh my guy, Eric Saubert. Nice.
Is he a free agent?
Yeah, he is. I like him a lot, actually.
I know you do.
I like him a lot.
So, But and he's a guy that could be cost control. Like he's a guy that's not going to break the bank. He's a guy that you're not going to be bringing on some mega deal or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
So
1.2. That's
yeah. So but he's exactly, he's like a Troutman kind of guy. He's that guy that's going to come in and he'll have one or two splash plays where you're going to look at him and say, wow, that was really good. And then he's going to have a bunch of plays where he's going to disappear, but he's going to play the functional. He's going to do the dirty work for you. He's going to block the edges. He's going to do those sorts of things, which is obviously the unsexy part of being a tight end, right? Which is the inline blocking and kind of playing that dual role.
Yeah.
I would argue that the problem that the Raiders have right now is that they need their guy to be more than just a pass catcher in the future. Because at some point, as you start going against better teams, and you kind of experienced a little bit that this year with some teams that you went up against, where when they have enough defensive talent, they can negate a guy, like Bowers. They can actually lock him down because they're able to commit additional resources to double team and stop him. Now, your team
only player that looked good against Bowers the whole season was Surtain, defensive, player of the year.
Yeah.
Besides that, no.
I mean, did anybody look good against Surtain? I don't think so.
Not really.
He shut everybody down.
Yeah, he did. But
year, man.
But you're gonna, as you start seeing certain teams and as you start cycling through different divisions, you're going to start coming across defenses that are wrecking balls. And what I mean by that is that they're going to be able to prevent through pressure the ability for your quarterback to pick apart the middle part of the field, because they won't be able to get the ball up and over the 6'6" dude's head that's, about to smash your quarterback to the ground. And kind of like what the Eagles were doing to Mahomes, right? Mahomes has been kind of slicing and dicing death through 1,000 paper cuts for the majority of the 2024 season. And then he started playing Philly, who basically got home so quick that he couldn't shift, move, and make that quick throw. He was off his game, and he was so, seeing ghosts, to kind of steal the Sam Darnold line, that he started making those mistakes. And so I think you're going to start coming across guys that are going to push you, or teams that are going to start to push you, and will start game planning for Bowers more, especially now that they know exactly who he is and what his tendencies are.
Yeah.
And tight ends are traditionally one of those players, or positions rather, that is a 2 to 3 year investment. They are very much like left tackles. They are very much like right tackles. They are, and quarterbacks for that matter, actually, if you're going to kind of put kind of a position group kind of in a mold. There's so much nuance to the game that typically one facet of their game is lacking. So they either run block well, but their pass pro sucks as a lineman. They either
and
catch
Richie,
the
I'm
ball
going to
well,
disagree with
or
you
they
on
don't
that,
do
because Bowers is not a traditional tight end. He plays all over the field. You can put him at the X, the Z, the slot, or at tight end, either side, like 11 personnel, 12 personnel. You can move him wherever you want to move him, and he has the ability to play that, where traditional tight ends don't have that capability. They're either going to be, a pass catching tight end, run blocking tight end, or they have a mix of both. Kind of like Michael Mayer, but they're not going to have the capability to move outside.
So, for example, Tyler Warren, who's like the top tight end in this draft, he's your prototypical inline blocker, catching balls over the middle, red zone threat. And then Colson Loveland is your kind of your Bowers, Kelsey type, move him all over the field, can play that X if he needs to. So that's that style for these upcoming tight ends. But there's other tight ends in this draft that are like these hybrid guys. And I'm trying to remember their name. I think Fannin might be another name.
Yeah, there's a couple of them in this draft. What were they?
Hey, Richie, post that question real quick. I just want to answer it. Cowtown. That's an easy one, bro. It's Mason Graham all day, every day. There's so many running backs out there in this draft. There's running backs in free agency, but there's not many guys like a Mason Graham. Again, you weren't on the here earlier, but we've probably seen it in other chats. Mason Graham's comp is Christian Wilkerson. And we just got done paying him like over $100 million to have two of those guys on the same line would be dominating.
Yeah. And, you know, I know we all have similar opponents.
DZ, you were thinking – sorry, just going to quickly close off that tight end discussion. You were thinking of Arroyo, Elijah Arroyo, Gunnar Helm, and Harold Fannin. Are those three – you know, they are a tick below the other two guys, that Warren and Loveland, but they are they're going to have success, at least probably two of them out of those three, you would think, in the league, and so those are certainly no slouches either.
I keep forgetting you Raiders have the 6th pick, man. I'm like, oh God, there's some dudes right there that
I'm okay with not taking a quarterback in round 1. I'm okay with it.
I mean, yeah, if you guys got the money to pay somebody in free agency, I mean, why not?
It just depends who falls. And if the guy I don't want's there, I see a trade back. Accumulate more picks, because you know what? You can get like the darts in the Milrose, you know, in the 2nd round. And, you know, plus that talks about, like, you know, Chip Kelly's guy from Ohio State, which he's not going to go in the first 2 rounds at all. But I could see Chip doing it, and then again, pick up one of these free agent guys at the bridge. Or, like I said, if they get Stafford, I'm not drafting a quarterback until the 3rd round.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, if you were smart, what I would do is I would bring in like a Stafford or another guy that's probably not going to be on your team or in the league for
probably 2 years, 3 years.
2 or 3. You sign him on a 2-year deal, but you have an out somewhere where you're not eating too much dead cap in year 3, sort of thing. So you can spread across that signing bonus and everything. And then you draft your potential quarterback of the future, but you have that very candid discussion with the quarterback ahead of time. So if Rodgers is probably not going to be in the league, I'm just using him as an example, and he's probably not going to be playing, or may not want to play, you know, say maybe he wants to kind of leave a legacy behind. So you maybe work out a deal with him where you say, look, we're going to bring you in, and we're going to draft a guy that we're going to kind of look to you to not necessarily mentor per se, but certainly work with us as we try to groom him to kind of take over for you in 2 years' time, or in a year and a half time, or something along those lines. And just kind of be very transparent with the quarterback when you bring him in, and then try to do that route. Now, I also think it's possible that you're looking at the quarterback class this year and saying, no, thank you, like at all. And it's possible that you bring in a guy like Stafford where you extend him for like a 4-year deal, because a lot of these quarterbacks and stuff and these players, they don't like these 5-year deals. They want 4-year deals so they can try to take another kick at the can while they still have some gas left in the tank, right? And so maybe you do stuff like that, a 2-year deal or a 4-year deal, or a 3-year deal even.
I'm thinking a 3-year. I think the way I see it, Richie, because Pete Carroll's got 3 years with a 4th-year option. So I'm thinking, you know, if they were to trade for a Stafford, then you probably go a 3-year deal. And again, I don't disagree. They're going to draft a quarterback in this draft. I'm just saying I don't care for one that early, especially if a Mason Graham is on the board.
Jack, what do you think about Cooper Rush? I didn't even know he was a free agent.
Cooper Rush? I thought he just got drafted by the Saints, and so I thought the whole thing about him was like, if they let Carr go, then he's going to have to be the next guy in line.
No. Cooper Rush is with the Cowboys.
Oh,
he's Dak's backup.
No,
he looked really good when Dak got hurt. What was that last?
So Jack, ago? Do you know who I think you should go after? Zach Wilson.
No. Now you're making me laugh. That's a big laugh, because I know how much you loved him in Denver, so I'm sure you would love to have him on the Raiders.
No, I actually really did like him, and I thought he was quite good. And if you looked at him in New York, if you're going to be quite honest,
I'd rather have Fields all day over Russell Wilson. If it was going to happen,
No,
it would
I
have
didn't say
happened last
Russell
year at the
Wilson.
1.8 million that Denver was paying instead of signing him for like,
Ron
30.
Wilson. I said Zach Wilson, the
Oh,
young
no.
dude that came from New York.
Yeah, no, I don't need him chasing the moms out there in Vegas.
Well, that's going to happen no matter where he goes. So that's just a given.
No, Zach. That's a hard pass for me.
I get with Chip with Fields, but dude, that kid is so inaccurate throwing, man. There's so many times I watch that guy just sail balls right over people's heads or nowhere near where they're at. I mean, maybe Chip could fix him, but I don't know. Are you just intrigued by his rushing or something?
Well,
Jack?
I'm intrigued for like Chip Kelly's type of offense,
Okay.
because the run and shoot, type stuff that he has, he does fit that mold. He's only going to cost you from $6 to $8 million, and then you're going to draft another quarterback in the draft anyways. And right now they don't have an X receiver, so whenever we start talking, about Raiders, in the way of like my top 5 and so forth, they don't have that X receiver except for Tucker, who's in the slot, that really can extend the field anyways.
So Myers, or not Myers, but what's his name?
Bowers?
No, your receiver you have.
Oh, Myers. Myers is not. Myers is a good number 2.
Okay.
He's got solid hands, good route running. He broke over 1,000 yards, but he's not a speed guy.
I got you. Okay. I mean, neither is really. I mean, so Devontae, free agent, he's really not a speed guy per se, but he can definitely be an X. So I don't know if you necessarily need to. You just gotta have good separation, good ball.
But Devontae was still better than Myers in doing that, in the way of getting that separation, because he's even a better route runner. He does have a little bit more juice in the way of speed. So yes, he can create that, but until they get a pure X, I wouldn't mind testing it with Fields. And the guy's young too. So, maybe he can learn under a guy like Chip Kelly.
Fields is like, what is he? He's only
25, 26.
Where did he just go? Where did I just had him up here? Justin. Oh, he's 20. Yeah, he's going to be 26. Man, I wish Alex wasn't sick, because I'm like, I know like they have some predicaments in Kansas City and obviously what just happened to them in the Super Bowl. But I'm like, what do they do? And it seems like, other than the factor of the Raiders needing a QB, like it just seems like the majority of our teams need similar players. Chargers, interior line, edge guys, weapons, tight end, running backs, you name it. And it's just Richie named his guys, named what his team needs. Jack, same as. So yeah, this is gonna be an interesting free agency, because like, which way, who gets who and what, how does this all pan out?
So DZ, what's your top 5? You want to do like with the free agents, like in order.
Was him? I'll try to remember what I have.
I want to see them target first and go through the list.
Well, so this is what's crazy. So Elijah Molden was one of our guys that we got back. I'm really excited that we got him back. I really loved his play. Dude is a baller at free safety, man. And it's not just him at free safety; it's what he allowed Derwin to do in the box, like I stated earlier. Now, I would love for him to bring J.K. Dobbins back. I think he's going to be even better with another year out from his injury. He should have got comeback player of the year, but he did have a 4-game IR stint, and he wasn't hurt, but they wanted to rest him. He was like tweaked up, banged up, and they're like, all right, let's just shut him down. And they thought, okay, we got Kamani Vidal, Hassan Haskins, and Gus Edwards. We should be fine. They weren't fine. When JK was out, it was very obvious. Gus Edwards was not the Gus Bus, and we have him for another year. And I could see him being a cap casualty. That'll save him $3.5 million, I think, if they let him walk or cut him. He just was not good. So I'd like to bring JK back, and I think that you dip in the draft somewhere and get another running back, especially in this draft, in the 2025 draft. And then you have Khalil Mack, and they want Khalil Mack back. Today, Jim Harbaugh was on. Jim and the GM were on the Pat McAfee show, and they were both in Indy. And Jim Harbaugh told Joe, like, pay the man. But the thing is Khalil, he's got maybe 1 or 2 years left in him, some high upper echelon play, and he's never been a free agent in his career. So, which is interesting, right? For a guy of his stature, he's always been traded, bounced around, right? And it's like, he's been in LA for the last 3 years. Does he want to take his family out of that and go to maybe a team that he thinks is ready to contend in 2025? Or does he stay in LA and think that they can get that all together to contend this year or next year? Does he want to wait? Does he want to go for the money? I mean, I could see him going to Buffalo. I could see him going to Detroit. I could see him, wanting to go to a team who thinks that they'll be in the Super Bowl next year, potentially.
Let me throw this at you. Here's an interesting one. So Josh Sweat, he's a free agent.
Right.
And depending on the money, and if Josh Sweat goes, and that window is right there with the Eagles.
Now, I think people disagree. I think some people disagree with me, but I think Sweat is he excelled in that system, the Philly system, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say he wouldn't do that in LA or some other team? I'm not going to say he wouldn't, but I think he just benefited with that Philly. Everything I saw with the Philly players, they're higher upper echelon players, but it's almost like they fed off of each other, if that makes sense. Like, so you pull them off and you bring them to your team, and it's like, I would tempt my expectations of them to ball out like they did, like a Sweat to do that, say, on another team. But, because they were just loaded, man. And I just felt like they were just like, there's a guy in free agency that I was trying to say something to Richie about it. There's a D tackle that is a free agent in Philly. And let's see.
Milton Williams.
Yes. That's a guy that I'm like, man, go after him. And then I'm like, okay, let's, pump the brakes a little bit. Now, did he do that for all 4 years there, or was that just last year? How does that work? But
he's been a backup for him. He gets when Jalen Carter or the other I keep forgetting his name.
Davis, the other one, Davis.
Yeah,
right?
Davis. It's like both Georgia boys, and it's like when one of those guys go off to catch a breather, he's like the guy that goes in.
Yeah. So I was just talking about bringing back. I would like to bring back a lot of the guys they brought in last year, and then obviously that's not going to happen. You're not going to bring back everybody, right?
No, but DZ, I have a question for you. Do you feel like then to get Mac back, you would have to move on from Bosa?
Bingo. So Bosa is projected to make an astronomical amount of money.
What, $32 million?
Yeah.
If I'm right.
Yes. And man, there's so much coach and GM talk out there, right? But the consensus with the fan base is they want him to walk. We're like, trade him, walk, save that money, and spend it elsewhere. Well, free agency and the draft, it's like for the edge department, there's guys, yeah, sure. You can get guys to fill in, but like I'm like, who? Like, I get Bosa, right? Like, he's worn his like whole welcome out with the fan base, let's just say, and I think it's time to go. I think it's time to let him go, but you can't let him go if you lose Mac, if that makes sense. Because then we are put in a whole whirlwind with just Tuli Pelotu, who was had an outstanding rookie year, but last year took a step back in his second year. And then that just leaves a second year guy and then a couple unprovens, like so our edge room now all of a sudden is becoming a potential like, crisis, kind of like, uh-oh, what are we going to do here? And it's all pivoting on a 34-year-old Khalil Mack, or so. Yeah, man. There are some stuff, coming up. It's all, we'll see, right, Jack? We'll see. It's exciting, but we'll see. I think
what makes this so interesting, I think, to what you're kind of getting at there, is that our teams, while our order of positions may be slightly different, the vast majority of the positions within the division for our three teams specifically are very similar, plus or minus one position or two positions for the position group, right? Like, for example, Jack may prioritize Jack has a quarterback, which obviously our teams don't have on the list yet, right? Which is, thank goodness, the first off season I don't have to talk about bloody quarterback for my team, right? But at the same time, backup quarterback is kind of a topic for the Denver Broncos at some point, right? Which is kind of a big deal.
Same here.
But we're going to get into that, maybe next show or the show after. But these are all very important pieces. But we're talking like guard or center or inside
running back, wide
receiver, running back. Like we're all talking the same positions. The difference is, where do they sit in that order that we believe they ought to be? And we're talking a position here or there between all of us, which makes the show really interesting. Really, the only team in our division that is a fair bit different is the Chiefs. Because the Chiefs have certain positions locked up on their team that we don't. And I think they're going to lock up certain position groups that we just don't have that opportunity because we don't have the right guy on the roster to really fill that role long-term for us. So I think that this overall offseason from free agency, and this is why it was such an interesting topic to kind of bring up on the show, is who and in what position. And I think then the question is it free agency or draft too, right? Because this is the difference, is that my draft order is not the same as my free agency order. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna want
best player available, right?
No, but well, not necessarily.
But I'm as a whole though. I mean, plus the free agents, cost you a bunch of money. And you got to weigh that into your decision. Is it worth, again, like a guy like T. Higgins, which all three of our teams could use a T. Higgins, but do you want to spend $30+ million on a T. Higgins?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Right. I agree. And so that's my point, right? Is that this offseason going to be really interesting. I think all of our teams have very similar needs in free agency. It's going to be very curious to see the differences in team strategy between our three teams in particular. I think that the KC strategy is going to be a little bit more straightforward because they have somewhat fewer holes to really backfill on their roster, generally speaking. But with that in mind, we're going to go into a little bit more detail and some additional things next week, where we're going to start getting deeper into the off season for each of our teams. And start going into not necessarily just free agency in general, but we're going to start talking about, one or two guys that we want to bring back, or we believe we need to bring back on our teams. And so anyone in the chat there, if you have anyone on your team, whether it be the Broncos, Raiders, Chiefs, or Chargers, that you want to see brought back on your team, leave it below as a comment in the chat, and we'll try to bring that player up. And Jack, obviously, we'll have some more in-depth discussions, and DZ will have some in-depth discussions on kind of players that we have on the roster that we want to kind of return or have returned, or whatever the case may be. So with that in mind, guys, we are nearing kind of the end of the show here. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add with regards to the free agents that you just feel that we need to bring up before we wrap it up?
You were saying you wanted a inside linebacker?
Correct.
You're well, I don't necessarily know if Nick Bolton was an inside, but I know the Chiefs, one of their top guys.
He's inside.
Yeah, he's a free agent, and I don't hate the free agency for the linebackers. I'll say that. So
yeah.
So
and then
so I can answer. I want to answer Cowtown's question. No, I'm not doing Zabel at the number 6. I'm looking at number 6. We're looking for generational type players. So I can't say that he's going to be one of them.
Is Zabel at a tackle, the offensive tackle?
I don't even know if he's a guard or tackle, but it's like there's such a huge drop off from the number 1 tackle. And right now, the Raiders still have Colton Miller. After he started getting healthy, he played like old Colton Miller. We got a guy like that. So I don't need to replace him. We got DJ Glaze last year with our 3rd round pick. He's holding that part down. I don't need to spend, money on another tackle and then have one of those guys sit. So again, I'm looking at, like someone like a Mason Graham, or is like, if not a Mason Graham, I'm just okay at moving back because there's really not much. Maybe the other cornerback from Michigan is probably the best pure cornerback. So between those two guys, I don't need a quarterback. I just move back.
I think you guys, Hobbs is a free agent, right? And then your safety Morrig is a free agent.
And I'll save that for next week's show since that's where we're going to talk about the positions.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's why I did the 3 because there's not 2, there's 3 that the Raiders really need to resign.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, I just to kind of cover that off. Yeah, an inside linebacker is a very undervalued position group in today's NFL, where they're just not given the same credit that they used to in years past.
No.
When you look at the way that the D line plays and the flexibility that solid inside linebackers provide you, is you're able to then stop the run with just a simple combination of your D line and inside backers, and then allow your defensive backs and safeties to not have to then supplement poor inside linebacker play. And so a guy like Bolton would certainly be one, and there's a few other guys. It just came out today that Sean Payton is finally deciding to end the ridiculous Drew Sanders experiment as an outside linebacker. So he's going to be brought back as an inside backer for my team, which is a good thing. I mean, it's about bloody time. But, again, the point is you need guys that can kind of go sideline to sideline, but you also need guys that can kind of come inside and play that thumper role to kind of backstop the defensive line. And so, I think that's an incredibly important position, and it's one that is often just not at that pedestal like it used to be. Like, remember the Ray Lewises and the, those types of dudes. I mean, they were like they were the guys that were playing chess against the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Bradys and stuff. And if you hear the way that those two quarterbacks, just as an example, talk about the Ray Lewis and Urlachers and guys like that, they are Peyton puts those guys on the pedestal to say, like, I don't think you understand, like like
the Chargers had a coach for 3 years who didn't value linebacker play at all. Mm-hmm. And it showed in his defense. And then he had a guy sitting who was a rookie in Deion Henley, who he refused to play him. Deion Henley this year led the team in tackles, was a freaking stud, absolute dog on that defense. We had, he refused to use him last year. I mean, so linebacker is very underrated, and I feel like
is Perryman still on your team?
So he's a free agent. We brought him in for a 1 year. He was a 1 year deal. He's 32, and I don't know if he comes back, but I mean, the dude was so good for us in that run stuffing department. I mean, he was good for the Raiders. He was good. He's good when he was a Charger before that. He's just that hammer. You need a nail to be, knocked down. That's Denzel, man. But don't have him cover anybody. But other
Right?
No.
Absolutely not.
yeah.
Absolutely not.
No.
So guys, that'll do it for the show for today, where we will discuss like players on our team that we want to bring back, which is kind of the flip side to free agency, which is sometimes holes are just simply filled by you backfilling with guys that you already had because you want them back. We'll discuss that next week on the show. Alex will be back with us to bring in the KC perspective. And guys, until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.